and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us again through the magic of Zoom. I'm Essex Porter from KIRO 7, and for the next 90 minutes, we're going to be talking about the issues that are important to many people in the downtown community. Each mayoral candidate will get 60 seconds to answer each question, and we're going to try to make it as clear as we can in this Zoom environment who is getting the questions. For candidates, we'll gently warn you if you're close to running out of time. If you get a little too long-winded, we can cut your microphone off. We're going to try to limit rebuttals with a bunch of candidates. Even 90 minutes is going to go by pretty quickly. Our candidates this morning are former Chief Seattle Club Executive Director Colleen Echohawk, current Seattle City Council President Lorena González, former City Council President Bruce Harrell, businessman Art Langlie, and current Seattle Deputy Mayor Casey Sixkiller, and former manager in the Seattle Office of Economic Development, Lance Randall. Chris?
Yeah, and good morning once again to everybody. I'm Chris Daniels from King 5, and because of the number of candidates that are participating today, we're going to be efficient and try to cover as much ground as possible. Now, instead of opening statements, I'd like to address head-on the elephant in the Zoom room. Every candidate was given an opportunity to fill out a questionnaire, as James said off the top, in advance of this forum, which included a question about their recovery plan for downtown. As James also alluded to, you can read the full answers on the DSA website. Of the candidates participating today, only one candidate declined to answer the questionnaire and then wrote an opinion piece in The Stranger about why they didn't answer the questionnaire, and that was Lorena Gonzalez, who wrote, quoting now, "It's that type of self-interested approach, disregarding the needs of dozens of other diverse neighborhood districts in their communities, that has failed Seattle in the past." The DSA's President John Scholes responded by writing a response saying it means Lorena doesn't have a plan. So we'll give it another shot here. Lorena, we start with you. What is your plan for downtown's recovery?
Thanks so much. I do have a plan. I have a citywide plan. You can see it on my website at lorenaforseattle.com. It's called the Progress for All Plan. That really is robust, in my opinion. It has 7 points that talks about how we can focus our economic recovery in a manner that is equitable. And I believe that an economic recovery plan for all of our neighborhoods across the city must be first and foremost centered on workers, centered on the people who have felt the brunt of this pandemic and this economic recession. The mega corporations that exist in our city, whether they're in downtown or any other neighborhood, do not need taxpayer subsidies. We need to rescue the people who are feeling the brunt the most. We have thousands of workers and families in our city who are on average 14 months behind in the rent. They are facing down the barrel of eviction every single day that goes by. They are the ones who deserve city leadership and a mayor who's going to be interested in focusing our economic recovery plans on them and not on those corporations who have made historic record profits off of this pandemic. My plan focuses on that by making sure that we're empowering workers, by creating good jobs across the city, by confronting racialized wealth inequality and restoring community wealth and health, and by making sure that we are promoting the thriving future of vibrant neighborhood commercial and cultural districts, again, in every single neighborhood across the city. And lastly, making sure that we have a just transition and all of our business districts across the city to solve the climate crisis head on that all of us have just personally experienced over the last 3 days. These are the plans that I will prioritize, and I will be focused on making sure that workers are at the center of my policymaking as we consider and implement policies from City Hall, from the mayor's office, that will focus on lifting up the workers who are continuing to feel extraordinary pain at a disproportionate level as compared to mega profitable corporations that are primarily located in downtown.
Lorena Gonzalez, thank you. Colleen Echohawk, in your questionnaire, your answer to it, you mentioned safe and clean streets, expedited application and permit approvals, and sufficient business support services. Can you expand on that?
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Chris. And, I fell in love with Seattle because of our downtown. Downtown Seattle is a treasure, and it is a treasure we must guard fiercely. And I think that you all are probably very aware that the reason I am jumping into this race is because we have allowed a humanitarian crisis to happen on the streets of our city for far too long. We can solve this problem. We can find solutions for these thousands and thousands of people who are suffering on our streets. And that is why I'm jumping into this race, and know that it can, finding security for this community will only make downtown better, so that we all can enjoy a vibrant downtown. I am excited about creating more jobs in downtown. I think that the city of Seattle needs to open. We need to bring employees back on July 1st. We know that the whole state is going to have the opportunity to open. We should be the leaders around the rest of the city to bring back employees into downtown. And then finally, I want to say that this city is the coolest city. I chose to live here purposely. We need to bring back a vibrant nightlife. We need to bring back our restaurants. We need to make sure that this is a city that everyone wants to live in. I will be that leader and that ambassador for Seattle to ensure that this city comes back stronger than ever and is supporting some of our most vulnerable community members by bringing them into security and stability.
Colleen, thank you. Bruce Harrell, you talked about in your answer to the questionnaire, helping restaurants and bars, addressing public safety and homelessness as priorities. What else?
Well, thanks, Chris. Excuse me. First, I think a plan has to start off with a fairly accurate understanding of what the impediments to revitalization will be. And the homelessness issue and our public safety strategies, along with our small business revitalization efforts, become critically important. I've worked downtown for the last 35 years, and so I'm no stranger to those impediments. And I've been doing stringent walking tours with small businesses and neighborhood activists to better understand with clarity what's happening right now as we speak, not just 5 or 10 years ago. So first, when I announced my candidacy, now it's been a couple of months, I had actually police officers at my kickoff, and I tried to make a statement that I didn't subscribe to a defund narrative, that nothing I know about organizational design and improvement would suggest that you starve a department from resources when you're trying to make it optimally efficient, very effective with response times. We will change the culture and we will eliminate bias. I was the sponsor of the bias-free policing law, of course, and make sure that we get rid of bad cops. But we need to revitalize in our public safety efforts. Being effective are closely linked to our homelessness efforts. And in our homelessness efforts, which clearly these are an impediments toward revitalization, you will see at a click of a button, a tab with ROI on the investments. We will rebuild public trust such that the public knows the cost per unit, the cost per person, our individualized case management strategies, et cetera. And last, I'll say on our race and social justice work that will govern and dominate a lot of the discussions next year, that many know my work in this space. And so I think we need a mayor who can not only work with small businesses in terms of revitalization, removing regulatory hurdles, making sure we have effective public safety, we are accurately and efficiently addressing homelessness, but can grapple with the race and social justice issues that will sort of be the tail wagging the dog in our city. And clearly my platform allows for that.
Art Langlie, you touted your business credentials in your response to the questionnaire and also said it's time to treat homelessness as an emergency, but wasn't it a state of emergency 6 years ago?
Apparently. Thanks, Chris, for that. I don't understand how we've gone almost 6 years now with that quote unquote state of emergency. We are not being compassionate by allowing people to sleep in parks and on streets. We need to find them shelter, and we need to find them the services that they need. We have a serious problem in downtown Seattle because it seems to have been centered a lot in that area. And right now, if you walk the city, you'll see bazaars of stolen goods being sold on the side of the street. The city smells awfully, and there's garbage in many places. We need to bring Seattle's downtown back to what is respectable as the Emerald City again. We have an almost $2 billion expansion of the convention center underway right now. I think we're challenged to find any convention booker in this country that would send anybody here, given the relationship to the media that we have right now on the stories that have happened here. I'm not quite sure how we fill that. The cruise industry is going to restart, but most of the travel people will tell you that the people are not coming here to stay for days before their trip or after. They're just passing through to get on the boat and leave. That's a problem for Seattle. That's a problem for Seattle's business, small business and big business. Lorena talked about funding our programs in the city for the homeless people. We really need business to be successful in order to get the revenues that downtown generates in order to pay for the programs that I envision helping these people with.
Art, thank you. Casey Sixkiller, you talked about immediate B&O tax relief, ramping up emphasis patrols. How will that help?
Oh, thanks, Chris. Look, downtown is on life support. Street level crime and homelessness have been threatening the future of downtown for years, with no accountability from the current council president or the past council president. The future of downtown cannot be pinned on broken, truncated systems that the city council has been invested in for over a decade. So we got to get back to some common sense, practical solutions for downtown, which includes investing in things that we know works. We have to have housing for folks to be able to transition safely off the street and begin the process of breaking their experience with homelessness. We need to invest in more cops while scaling up alternatives to 911 response so everyone feels safer. And we got to invest in the things that we know work, actually have a partnership with business rather than giving them the stiff arm and say, hey, what do we need to be doing to support you? Whether it's bringing your employees back downtown, helping you transition to a new hybrid post-COVID model. But really, I think importantly, the mayor's job is to be the chief marketing officer, to make downtown hum and thrive again. But we gotta start making it, we gotta make it less difficult for businesses to be downtown. And that includes the cost of actually being a small business or a larger business in downtown Seattle.
Casey, thank you. Lance Randall, your answer suggested a property tax incentive program to refill commercial spaces and more public safety resources. What does that mean?
Well, what that means is that we have a lot of small businesses that are downtown, as well as corporations. We have smaller retailers, we have grocery stores, we have restaurants, and there's a lot of vacant space because of COVID and what it did to our economy. A lot of people could not hold on to their businesses. So we're going to have to take some proactive measures from an economic development perspective to get small businesses, small retailers back downtown into these spaces. And one way to do that is an economic development best practice across the country where you incentivize property owners to be able to help smaller tenants get back into their spaces. And the way you do that is you offer property tax relief against a property tax if they do certain things like do tenant improvements on behalf of the small businesses, or if they want to offer some free rent for a period of time, then we should be able to provide them a tax incentive against that consideration as well. Again, this is a best practice that's used to try to generate activity in downtown. And the way it balances, the city will sacrifice part of their tax allocation through the tax assessor's office. They will sacrifice it up front, but it's paid back by the tenants through triple net, which is always a part of the lease rate. And part of triple net is paying part of the taxes and maintenance. So we'll sacrifice a little bit up front, but we'll get it back in the end. But it's designed to make sure that we're helping to refill these spaces as quick as possible with consideration toward the property owners who are offering the space. When I talk about safety, we have to make downtown safe for those who live there, who work there, who shop, and also for the tourists that will be coming back. And the only way that we can do that is we must increase the presence of our police officers in downtown so that we can deter people from committing crimes and hold people accountable who commit crimes. And we have to make sure that they're prosecuted. We have to make it safe. And we also have to make sure that we're being proactive in creating a pathway for small businesses to come back. But then the final thing we must do is we have to stop the negative rhetoric coming out of City Hall. All of our businesses are important, large corporations, small businesses, and mom and pop operations that are home businesses. We should not at any point criticize or make any negative statements toward our business community, large or small. They're a very important part of our economy. They contribute a lot to our economy through the taxes, fees, and also philanthropic donations. So I will lead the way in killing this negative rhetoric against our corporate community and any business that operates in the city of Seattle. We will show them support. We'll be proactive in making sure that they have what they need, and we will not have any type of policies coming out of City Hall. I will not support any policy coming out of City Hall that will impose any type of taxes against our corporate community, especially if we have not been good steward of the tax dollars and we have gaps.
All right, Lance Randall, I'm gonna let it stand there. As we move on now with other questions, a friendly reminder to all the candidates to try and limit your comments to 60 seconds, your answers to 60 seconds. And with that, we move on to my friend Essex Porter.
Thank you, Chris. And we will try to rotate who gets the questions first. We won't have a perfect rotation, but we'll try to do that. Colleen Echohawk, this question goes to you first, but all other candidates will have the opportunity to answer. Seattle's suffering this week from record high temperatures. How will your transportation plans help fight climate change? And is free transit for everyone part of those plans? Colleen Echohawk.
Well, absolutely. I think that this past 3 days were heartbreaking. I know that knowing people who live outside, I felt so much for them. And I can tell you that we have so much to do as a city. And I want to offer a little bit of perspective that I think the city wants to do the right thing. We want to be a leader in climate justice, and that includes our transportation systems. And so I am supportive of making transportation easier, more accessible, everywhere possible that we can. I support more bike lanes. I support more easier access for walking, because we have to change. We are heading in a very, very negative and dark place, as we saw over the past 3 days. And as far as free transportation goes, I think we have to look at that carefully. I am laser focused on solving our homeless crisis. And that's where I will be wanting to put as much of our dollars as we possibly can into solving that crisis. We cannot come back as a city without solving this humanitarian crisis. And so that will be a priority. I'm open to looking at the opportunities. I know that it is around $240 million county-wide. So that to me seems like it's something that is doable. And if we are going to be a city that is focused on climate justice, we need to be thinking about making it as easy as possible for people to get into public transportation and as accessible as possible. I want to invite you to check out our website to look at our mobility justice plans. And thank you for the question. It is incredibly important in this time frame we're in right now.
Question is next for you, Bruce Harrell.
Thank you, Essex. So, I think one thing we learned from the COVID experience coming out of COVID is the same thing we're learning from this record-breaking heat wave we are experiencing. That is, the city has to look at every available tool it has in its toolbox to, again, assist communities become vibrant, whether it's the built environment or the regulatory framework to loosen that up and to expedite design review as an example. Looking at where our transportation plans should smartly go in addition to the bike lanes. I don't just say I support bike lanes, I support certainly transit lanes and bike lanes where it makes sense, and we do it methodically and strategically. Again, realizing that, and I'll focus on the downtown core as an example, or even Chinatown International District, that we have to again realize that our transportation plans and our climate change plans and need to neatly fit into our whole ecosystem of what makes a city vibrant. And so we don't make these things in a vacuum. I also want to make a point that education becomes critical in our climate change policies, that remember the kids in the school today and grade school and middle school and high school will be our employees and our drivers tomorrow. And so as we talk about climate change and our built environment, that is important for even our younger generation to understand what we're trying to build here in the city, because sooner or later they will be the ones that.
First, let me wrap you up here. We're at a minute, and we'll move on to our next candidate, Art Langlie, climate change and free transit.
So COVID did teach us something important, which is that we need to limit the amount of congestion that we have, because I think having fossil fuels burning buses and cars on freeways idling and pumping out gas is not helpful. I don't believe in free transit. I believe in free transit in downtown Seattle, like the red carpet that we always used to have down there. But I don't believe that we should be giving away free transit completely. I think that we should incentivize employers to have Orca cards for as many employees as they can. With the opening of the North-South Sound Transit system, part of that line, we need to really focus on the east-west version of that, which is how do we move people from that spine into neighborhoods so that it's effective, so that people want to get out of their cars and want to get off of buses and use cleaner transportation. I think that if we are able to look at the data to know how we can provide people better access and more convenience to the places they need to go, we'll have less car travel and less stinky bus travel, which I think is important.
Okay. Casey Sixkiller.
Thanks, Essex. For me, it's both about climate change and air quality. And, as we are all prepare for what could be a smoky August again. And I think that's, yesterday or this past couple of days and what we experience every fall, and even, winter storms that are coming more regularly than they used to, I think is a call to action for us to continue to move forward with our climate change goals. Transit is a key component of our ability to address that. And I think, what our responsibility is making sure we have a robust and reliable transit network that has, is prioritizing access, especially with an equity lens for those parts of the city that we know are underserved by transit and have been historically, and service levels. And I think, again, with the opening of, new light rail connections this year and every year for the next 4 years, we really have an opportunity to retool the entire system to make those last mile connections, which we know are so important, which we also know help to incentivize folks getting out of their car and taking the bus, whether it's to go downtown or go run their errands. So I really see transit as a critical component. I don't think it should be free. We have a ton of programs in the city and across the county that allow us to bring down the cost to make sure that's not a barrier to transit. But I do think
let me interrupt you here. Let me interrupt you here and go on to Lorena Gonzalez.
My goal is to not be interrupted by Essex. Okay, here is here's my straight up answer. I do believe that we need to make it as easy as possible to incentivize people to get out of their cars and into our public transit, which should all be moving towards being green public transit modes of transportation. In order to do that, we must reduce the barriers that currently exist for people to get out of their cars and use bikes, walk, or our public transit system. So key way to do that is to make it affordable and accessible. So I do believe that the city should be moving towards free transit for all, not just in downtown, but across the city. I think it's good for our local economy, it's good for workers, and it will be good for the tourist and visitor industry as well. So I am committing to, as mayor, put us on a trajectory to evaluate what it will take to have free transit for all across the city as a key component and strategy to achieving our climate justice goals.
Chris?
Yeah, I don't think Essex Lance Ramsey got a chance, or Lance Randall got a chance to answer that question.
You are right.
Change. Yeah,
you are right. I did miss him. Lance, I apologize for missing you. And please, climate change and free transit.
Yeah, Essex, I think you were penalizing me for going over. I accept that. So I think that as we invest into our infrastructure going forward, that we should make sure that we prioritize safety for our residents as we continue to further our climate goals and provide that leadership to meet our goals. To do that, I want to make sure that we upgrade our traffic movement signals, crosswalk technology to improve safety. And we want to look at different options to make it safer for pedestrians, automobiles, and bikers around transit-oriented development sites, mainly around the bus stops and the light rail stops. So we need to make those investments to do that. And we also need to make sure that we look for opportunities nationally, statewide, and regionally to continue to support our transportation electrification blueprint. So that's going to be important as we move forward. But when it comes to free transit, I don't agree with free transit. I do believe that we should subsidize some people who need some assistance in maybe to ride transit, but someone has to pay the bills. We have drivers that need to get paid, buses need to be maintained. At some point, we have to purchase new buses. So free transit would not allow us to be able to do that because we will not have the money that we need to maintain the system. So let's subsidize people that need help, but everyone else needs to be able to pay to ride. And also to get more people out of their cars, let's, instead of penalizing people for driving their cars, let's incentivize them against their car tabs to not drive their cars and maybe work with the state.
And let
to
me interrupt you here.
Sorry, I did it again.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Okay, now Lance, you're going to get your the first crack at this next question, and we're going to get serious. We're going to talk about policing. The
Yes.
Seattle Police Department, as you know, had their budget cut last year and has had significant attrition in the past year and a half, causing leaders in that department to suggest that they're going to have a staffing and response time crisis. There was another shooting last night in West Seattle, and according to Chief Diaz, with that incident, there have now been 220 shootings and shots fired calls this year alone. So the question is, if you are elected, how will you approach the need to balance public safety downtown and the momentum to reimagine the police?
Well, as the mayor, the top priority that I will have is to keep the residents safe all over the city and in downtown. To do that, I have a public safety service delivery system, which consists of the police department, fire department, first responders, and human service providers who can prevent certain things from happening. That system needs to be strong, well-supported, well-staffed. And I'm going to commit to doing that, which means that I do not accept cutting any funding from any of these agencies, including the police department, but I do believe in reallocating within that police department to bring in the expertise that they need to help them do their jobs. When it comes to downtown, I mentioned earlier, we have to increase the presence. We have to send a clear message to those who are committing atrocities, doing property damage, robbing stores, and doing all types of different things that would no longer be tolerated. We will increase the presence. And then we're going to insist that our city attorney begin to hold these individuals accountable some form or fashion. We have to make sure they understand that we will consequences if you commit any type of atrocities downtown or anywhere across the city. And I will keep that commitment.
Thank you, Lance. Lorena, you have a unique perspective in this discussion, in this forum today, because you have been involved in adding funding to the police department and trimming funding to the police department over the last few years. How do you balance this idea, this need of public safety downtown, along with the momentum to reimagine the police department?
Yeah, I mean, I think the city leaders in this moment of racial reckoning and awakening for some members of our community have to be focused on the civil rights of people. That comes first. How do we protect and defend the civil rights of individuals? No Black, Brown, Indigenous person should fear interacting with police, and no Black, Brown, or Indigenous person in our community should have to have a conversation with their child about violent interactions with our public servants, with our city employees who are police officers. That's the kind of vision, that's the kind of centering of people that the next mayor needs to keep in mind in order to truly keep the momentum around reimagining police departments. Crime is up, violent crime is up across every major city during COVID, gun violence in particular. And when we look at the National Commission on COVID-19 and Criminal Justice and their report that they issued, they specifically talked about why it was important to not simply increase the presence of police officers, but to instead invest in systems, in harm reduction systems that do better to prevent this crime from occurring in the first place. We have begun to do that. I have supported those investments by creating a Department of Community Safety and Communications, by still fully funding the staffing hiring plan as proposed by the police department, and by increasing low acuity models like Health One. 3 of them have now been funded by the city council. And just recently, I voted to infuse community safety with a $12 million council-led investment in initiatives that will do more to prevent gun violence than mere presence of officers.
And with that, Colleen Echohawk, same question. How do you balance this? The idea of a need for public safety downtown and the momentum to reimagine the police department?
Yeah, I just recently was DSA board member, and prior to that, I was a mid board member, and I can remember working for many years with you all on 3rd Avenue. I can remember working on the 9.5 block strategy, and one of the things that we saw clearly there, and we also saw on a national level, is that more police officers does not equal more public safety. It doesn't. And we have to be effective. You'll hear me say this over and over again in my work as a leader of a nonprofit organization and in the work as mayor of the city, that we have to be effective, and effective measures around public safety has to include and is crucial to have investment in community-led prevention strategies. That means looking to the community and asking them, what are some of the solutions that you think will work for public safety, and trying them out and innovating them and including them in our city government budget, including community passageways, Choose 180, those kinds of organizations, as well as our mid ambassadors. I think our mid ambassadors are one of the ways that we can ensure that our streets are safe in our downtown core and around our neighborhoods. Public safety has to be addressed in the city. It has to be done with a community lens, and it has to be effective. I support Health One. I think it should be 24/7 citywide. And then the final thing I want to say is that if we do not solve our crisis of homelessness, we will continue to see public safety issues, because we have people out there who are desperate, who are doing desperate things because they are hungry, because they are exhausted, because they have no place to sleep. We have allowed a humanitarian crisis to go on for far too long in the city, and I am the person that can help solve this crisis for us.
Okay, let's move on. Bruce Harrell, and again, I'm going to remind everybody, I don't want to have to cut you off, so please limit your answers to 60 seconds. Bruce Harrell.
Well, we're trying to get some issue differentiation here, Chris. And so I will say this with respect to public safety. First, we have to recognize that particularly downtown, they have unique public safety issues that need to be addressed, that the experience of living and working downtown is completely unacceptable. So under my plan, we do look at the numbers. We look at one point, and we had over 1,384 patrol officers. And while, yes, we will reimagine police, we will reimagine where a gun and badge needs to go and does not need to go, but we need a strong public safety presence. And that could look like more mid ambassadors, and you all do a great job there. It could look like more community service officers, could look like a whole new kind of public safety officer. But we have to recognize that the stakes are pretty serious in this, unprecedented seriously, I would say. They're completely unacceptable. So under my plan, we will recruit new types of officers. They will be masters of de-escalation. That is exactly why I introduced the bias-free policing law. And I was the first to introduce body cameras, because I will do everything to make the department more effectively, but we will call out the unreasonable force when it needs to be called out. We will change the culture of the police department such that we can be proud of them. We can trust them. And I tell officers all the time that there's several bad officers. A bad officer is what we saw in Minneapolis, but a bad officer is one that doesn't have a presence in the community, not building community trust. So as we reform the police department and we build up the morale and the public trust, we'll also look at the numbers, because we have to invest in an effective public safety department. And we will do that under my leadership.
All right, Bruce Harrell, thank you. Art Langlie, same question. How do you navigate this balance?
Well, public safety and criminal activity in the police is not just a downtown issue, clearly. I mean, we've seen, I think almost every day there's been a shooting in Seattle in the last week. You guys report on it effectively. We will, at the end of this year, probably fall below 1,000 police officers in Seattle. Cities our peers, which are Boston and Baltimore, already have twice that many police officers. We have got a toxic environment that's been created by the leaders of our government with the police, which is unfortunate. And right now, anything below murder seems to be ignored by prosecutors. We cannot afford to have that continue that way. We have to stop petty crime as a basis for how we're going to reform how we police the community. I am all for changes to how we structure reform activities in policing. But before we implement something that might work in Eugene, Oregon, I think we need to pilot program that in Seattle and fund that to make sure that it will work here in Seattle, because there's significant size difference between here and there. There's other places around the country where these things do work, and we should also try those in Seattle. Let's take the best practices from other areas of the world. We're not necessarily the people that know everything about this, but we simply cannot continue to have the kind of theft. I mean, Lance was shot at this weekend when he was attempting to break up somebody taking his a neighbor's catalytic converter. This kind of stuff is out of control in Seattle. We have lost our special teams in the police department, which go around for the drug gun control, for instance. That is unacceptable. We have to have that team, and we have to have others. I'll stop, Chris.
Yeah. I think I'll give you the visual cue. So but we are running a bit here long with all the answers. Casey, I'm going to circle back to you, Lance. Casey, again, the same question. How do you balance this?
Well, I think first we just have to be real honest. People don't feel safe in Seattle right now. That's whether you're downtown, you live in the north, you live south, you live in West Seattle. And I can't tell you how many people talk to me every day about how they just don't feel safe. So to me, it's not really a balance, Chris. It's a both and. We're down 300 cops, period. The result of decisions by the city council over this past year that's driven cops, our most diverse class ever, to other jurisdictions. So I believe we have to hire more cops, but I also believe we have to continue to scale up alternatives to to an officer with a gun showing up to a 911 call. And we have a formula to do that, but we can't rob Peter to pay Paul. You have to invest in both if you want to see the outcomes we all want for our city. So we can disrupt criminal activity, we can address street crime, and importantly, we can get the right messengers and the right services to the folks that need them so they're not causing harm in our community anymore. So to me, it's not a balance, it's a both and we can do it.
Thank you, Casey. And Lance, I know you wanted to rebut, but Art also opened up a door there about a personal event that you say happened to you. What more did you want to say about this particular subject?
Well, we've had several forums, and I somewhat feel as though there's an assumption that people of color do not want police officers in their neighborhood to protect them. We need police officers to protect us because we have other enemies besides certain officers who don't like us because of the color of our skin. So we have to understand that we have to have a partnership. All communities have to have a partnership with the police department in order for us to prevent crime and stop crime. So we need to focus on that, building those relationships so that when we come up with these alternatives, we all are in agreement. It's almost though we're doing it separately. We have to do it together if we're going to come up with these alternative ways to policing, to keep people alive, and also to make sure we keep people safe. So let's be realistic about it. We need police officers, and we need them to protect all communities.
And the reporters, including Essex in the room, would give me grief if I don't follow up on what Art just left in the room in front of everybody, that you had something personally happen to you. What can you say about that?
Well, it was a very unfortunate situation. I was just trying to help my neighbor because of what I saw, and I did not expect to get shot at just from someone trying to steal a catalytic converter. But what I was attempting to do was get the license plate in order to give it to the police department so they could find these individuals, which have been going all around our neighborhood stealing catalytic converters. Hopefully we got enough information. We did get some video footage to find these people because they're dangerous. If they would shoot at me, they will shoot at others. And I just want to encourage people to look after each other, protect one another, and contact your police officers, partner with them as you try to deal with this issue. This is a very serious thing that we're dealing with, and it has to stop. So we need everyone's help to make it stop.
But here's the problem with response times as high as they are, and to come out to Lance's call, it would have taken 14 minutes. They're not following up on these crimes whatsoever. So, at some point we need to have more bodies in order to pursue these problems.
Essex?
Yeah, let's continue a bit on police, but let's focus a bit on downtown. Whatever level of staffing you believe the police department should have, should downtown get a special emphasis? And Lorena Gonzalez, the question goes first to you.
No, we have done enforcement and emphasis patrols year after year after year after year at the tune of millions and millions of dollars of overtime expenditures, and it has not solved the public safety issues in downtown. So I don't think it's an effective strategy. And if you want a mayor who is going to continue to support effective strategies, then I'm that person. What we do is we improve the built environment. We restore our arts and cultural districts. We engage in public-private partnerships to do things like we did at Westlake Park to make it vibrant, to allow for there to be good, positive use of the public realm and those spaces. Those strategies have been effective. Those have actually made downtown feel safe. What has not made a significant long-term difference is plopping bodies of officers into downtown for a short period of time at a very, very expensive price ticket for the taxpayers of our city. And then as soon as they leave, it all goes back to the way it was before. I don't think that's an effective strategy, and I'm committed to working on built environment solutions that will create a much more long-term positive effect.
Bruce Harrell, a special emphasis for downtown?
So Essex, words matter. And so I would shy away from the term special emphasis, but I think I get your point. And the reason I'd shy away from that is all communities have the absolute right to feel safe. Neighborhood community, small business districts. But I think the point is we have to recognize that downtown is a special economic generator. And it is a very special part of the city, given the mix of residents and small businesses and large businesses. So with respect to that, a very detailed plan on economic recovery tied into public safety, tied into what the new downtown will look like. And I have to tell you that you're sort of seeing a glimpse of what kind of mayor a person would be. And under my leadership, quite frankly, the buck stops with me. I don't make excuses. I certainly don't blame other people for any failures of the past. And it's going to be my responsibility as mayor to say that revitalizing downtown, making it feel safe, starts and stops with me. Working with the community activists, working with the city council, working with the police department. I think that blaming creates stagnation. And so having said that yes, we will make sure we have a very granular plan for downtown, and we'll make sure that we treat it as the gem of the city that it is, not to the detriment of other neighborhoods or other small business districts.
Colleen Echohawk?
In 2018, I was really lucky to visit Japan, and I can remember being in Tokyo, a huge urban hub, and feeling incredibly safe. And part of the feeling of safety was the community support that was built in everywhere. They have similar programs to like what we have here in Seattle, the Mid Ambassador program, where people are watching and looking, city employees looking to see if someone needs help and support. And I think that is what the kind of work we're going to need to have as we come back from COVID, as we invite people to come back into the downtown core. I don't believe that officers are going to be helpful for a long-term solution. We've seen it over and over again. We've tried it. It doesn't work. So let's do something new and support the programs that are working. I would support giving more resources to DSA to do exactly what we did in Westlake Park, what we did in Occidental, and increase the built environment so that we can create more opportunities for people to be hanging out, to be outside, and creating a vibrant downtown core that we all want. I also want to just, again, reemphasize that if we have to support our homeless community. We have to find solutions for them, and including mental health. We have mental health systems that are failing our community. We have people who are in mental anguish right now that we have done nothing for them. And so an Echohawk administration will be looking to solve those crises and increase the well-being of our entire city. That's what it looks like for me. And thank you for the question, Essex.
Okay. Art Langlie.
I think downtown does need special help, but as I said earlier, I think every neighborhood deserves quality, safety and police services. Bartell's drugs sold because they were losing millions of dollars a year in theft, and that is happening downtown consistently. I had a friend that was downtown this weekend who literally walked as somebody walked in from the street, grabbed a 12-pack of beer from a store and walked out, and they're not doing anything about it. We have a drug and alcohol problem on the streets of Seattle, and that public safety part of that is important to stop that from happening. Businesses can only thrive if they're not being stolen from. And we also have to have a downtown that is vibrant, as everybody said, and resilient, and that people are safe feeling when they're there. But if we keep cutting the police, we will not have the people to stop this from happening. The reason we have overtime at huge levels is because we don't have enough officers to fill the roll call shifts that they need to be out on to do these jobs. That's why we have overtime. It's not because they're just looking for hours to spend away from their families. We don't have the cops to do the job. So we need to spend more money to get that safety reestablished downtown. You can do the ambassador program. I think that's a great idea. I've got a program coming out soon that'll be talking about helping clean up downtown by using workforce training. But we can't go on with what we're doing with how we're doing it today.
Thank you. Casey Sixkiller.
Yeah, I do believe there need to be emphasis patrols downtown. And I want to be really clear. We're down 300 cops, over 20% of the SPD workforce. So I appreciate the other comments offered here today about the status quo, but we're not at the status quo. We're down 300 cops. And I think the fact is, I think some folks are spending parts of downtown and not going all the places they need to go because it's pretty, it is not the downtown that we experienced even a year and a half ago. People do not feel safe. And I agree, we need to have other services available to be intentional about connecting folks who are experiencing mental or some other crisis in their life to get them connected to the services they need. But we got to stop looking the other way when people are committing property crime. It is damaging the reputation and the quality of life in downtown Seattle, and it is sending a message to visitors and tourists and businesses that we can't fix it. And if emphasis patrols are part of the way that we begin to regain some control and create safety for folks to come back downtown, for workers to feel safe coming back downtown, then that's what we have to do. We cannot ignore the data that's staring us right in the face.
And Lance?
Yes, emphasis patrols should always be downtown because if you understand the economic development, we look at a city as it is a spoke wheel. And the center point of that spoke wheel is downtown. And the spokes should go out to the other communities. And if downtown is strong, the entire wheel is strong, which means that it can turn and we can go forward. So that's why it's important that we invest the necessary resources in public safety in downtown to make sure that it constantly stays vibrant and strong. And the prosperity in downtown is connected to our neighborhood business districts through the transportation corridors. So they will benefit, it's mutual benefit back and forth, communities, downtown, communities, downtown. That is how we have a strong, vibrant city. But in order to do that, we have to make sure that we are supporting public safety, making the necessary investments. And as we move forward, we will have challenges within our departments, but we have to continue to do the things necessary to remove personnel who are not cut out for certain positions and replace them with people who are cut out for these positions.
Okay, we have to stop there. We have to stop there. Chris?
Yeah, let's pivot to talk more about homelessness. This is obviously one of the biggest issues in this campaign. There are a lot of people in downtown who believe that visible encampments are a deterrent to economic recovery and scare tourists and customers off. There is also a Charter Amendment 29, that is gathering signatures that would lock in housing requirements and a percentage of the city budget to be spent on homelessness over the next 6 years. The question is, do you support the Charter Amendment? Let's start with you, Art.
Well, I respect the concern of those that support it. And I too feel that we've not held enough urgency on this issue. I don't think it's good governance, however, to punt this over to the voters to have to implement these issues or these solutions. And if you look at my solution on artlangley.com, shameless plug, you'll find that a lot of the things that are envisioned in this charter amendment, I'm already talking about doing. I therefore do not support the amendment per se. I think that it will be contentious and likely mire us in fallout that will take a long time to and may inhibit our solutions. So,
thank you, Art. Let's go to Casey.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for the question. Look, if the conditions in our parks and streets weren't evidence enough of failed approaches to solving homelessness, the fact that our voters may be asked to amend the charter to force a different approach should be a wake-up call for everybody. Is the charter amendment perfect? No. And as Senator Murray told me when I worked for her, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So, if this is what it takes for us to move past semantics to scale up housing and services and get folks connected to that, and also do something about the conditions on our streets that forces the council and the mayor to work together, then I'm all for it. And as mayor, I can work to fine tune it and fill in those gaps that I know has a number of folks concerned. But I support this effort, and I think it's an opportunity for us to come together as a city and actually make a difference on the conditions in our streets across Seattle.
Lance Randall, do you support the charter amendment?
Well, again, I have to echo my friend Casey. I think it's embarrassing that our leadership in City Hall could not figure this out after saying it was a public, issue that we need to address 6 years ago. But I will say this much: I support any opportunity to allow the public to chime in such an important issue. I'm undecided is my personal support, but I will tell you I have a proposal called the Dignity Project that if it passes, that means I have more money to put into this project, try to get people off the streets and camp in tents and RVs. If it doesn't pass, I still will try to implement my project to get people off the streets and RVs and tents into safer spaces. So whatever the will of the voters are, we'll make it happen, we'll make it work, and we'll finally go ahead and try to address this issue and control it and make it better for the city.
Lorena Gonzalez, do you support the charter amendment?
I don't. And I welcome an opportunity to provide a little bit more details about why I have made the personal decision to fill in the no bubble in my own ballot. $1 billion. $1 billion is what the most recent McKinsey report tells us it will take to finally solve by ending homelessness in our city. It will take $1 billion. So the charter amendment, what it does, if you like the status quo, which has been referred to as people as not working effectively, then you'll vote for the charter amendment because it does actually document existing city policy as it relates to homelessness. What I think is important for folks to understand is that it cements that current policy along with an unfunded mandate. And we know that it'll take $1 billion, that's with a B, to solve the issue of homelessness and to meet the scale of the need. Where will that money come from? The next mayor will be faced with making those cuts to vital services. And I think that would be a grave mistake for our city.
Thank you, Lorena. Colleen Echohawk, you have the perspective of working at the Chief Seattle Club. So the same question, do you support this charter amendment?
Yeah. So, we don't know what's going to happen yet with this charter, right? Like the voters may approve it. It may go to the ballot. We don't know yet, but I know what I'm going to do. I have a 22-point plan. It is concrete. It is ready to go. The moment that I'm elected, we will move forward on it and do the actual work that we've been talking about for years and years and years now in this city. Compassion Seattle, it's not a plan. It's a goal. It's a framework. I have a plan and I have the experience to execute the plan. I have been very successful in bringing people inside. I've been innovative. I've worked with the county to put surplus trailers on a parking lot in Soto to create a little village that is beautiful and successful. I've been building housing of $180 million of housing that we were building at Chief Seattle Club right before I left. We've moved whole encampments quickly and humanely. The University of Washington just released a paper on it and said that it should be a national model. If we want to solve this crisis of homelessness, we need to elect someone who has actual experience in doing it. And that is what I will bring to the mayor's office. I am not going to vote for Compassion Seattle. I think that my plan goes far beyond what Compassion Seattle is proposing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Colleen. Bruce, there appears to be a difference of opinion on this particular question more than any that we've asked so far this morning. Do you support the charter amendment?
I do. That's my answer. No, I'll elaborate. I do, because look at what I think it does. Number one, It requires the funding of treatment services. It suggests strongly that we have a compelling need to open our parks and public spaces. It requires the publishing, the making of a specific plan accessible to the public. It requires a dedicated funding source to aggressively address the core issue. And we all agree that the homelessness is our crisis of the day. It requires diversion from the criminal legal system. And many people on this call have done a lot of work in that space. And it requires us to work regionally, realizing this is a regional problem, not just a Seattle specific problem. Can I work with it? Yes. Does it give me the flexibility that I need? Yes. Is it perfect? No. But you know, it would be hard pressed to find a perfect law. So I think it gives me the flexibility to work with. I do support it. And quite candidly, I think that the city's tired of, I should say, they're starving for decisive leadership. They're starving for that. And so under my style, I don't mince words, and I will come out and say, this gives me the flexibility that I need to address the issue.
Thank you, Bruce. Essex?
Okay. Casey Sixkiller, you get the first crack at this next question. In the news, King County judges are asking for the removal of the large tent encampment at City Hall Park that's next to the county courthouse. That park, however, is owned by the city. As mayor, would you do what the judges are asking? And what do you think of condemning the park and selling it to King County, as one of the King County council members is asking? Casey Sixkiller, please start.
Oh, look, any act of crime in our city is one too many. And the fact is, at City Hall Park, it just even the last month and a half, we've had multiple acts of violence, not just against individuals and people, but animals as well. Our firefighters don't feel safe responding to 911 calls in City Hall Park. And in fact, they haven't felt that way for a long time without an SPD support. So, you know, I don't think it takes, you know, $15 million in new funding from the city and the county to be able to address that encampment. What it takes is an actual plan for how to create more housing, scale up services, and get folks into safer spaces, but do it intentionally. Yeah, and you know, I don't agree with condemning the park and transferring ownership. That just passes the buck. What we need to do is step up, make some tough decisions, and work to bring those services to folks in that park, and return it back to what it needs to be. I think it's pretty simple, but we have to do it with compassion. We can be laser focused and intentional about it as well.
And to be clear, the judges are asking that park to be cleared pretty quickly. It sounds like you're talking about a long-term process. And would you just also quickly talk about whether you would condemn it and sell it to the county?
I don't think we need a long-term process. Look, we were able to get 43 people inside from Miller Park just a couple of months ago with a coordinated outreach approach after 2 weeks, a by name list utilizing hotel and other emergency shelter assets that connected folks to services. That was a huge success. And it's a model that we can replicate at City Hall Park as well. We just need to make sure we have access to the resources so there are real offers of shelter and real offers of services. But like I said, I don't agree with condemning the park. I just don't think that actually creates the solutions that folks need.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's give Lance Randall the next crack at this question.
Well, again, this falls right within my Dignity Project, where when we have situations like this, we have to transition people to a safer place. To just kick them out of the park and they have nowhere to go is not going to solve the problem. So in response to what the judges are asking for, what we need to do is move quick as possible to find a place for another tent encampment, sanctioned tent encampment. We only have one right now in North Seattle, but this is where these people are waiting to transition into permanent housing. And we're leaving them on the street while we're trying to build the housing and transition. We can't continue to do that. We have to bring dignity to them and keep them in a situation that's safe, in a safe space as we transition them. So to respond to the judge, I would try to find as quick as possible a place for another tent encampment to move them off there to this location. And then we can go from there and then begin to implement my Dignity Project process once we're elected, which I think will make a difference in getting people off the streets.
Sell the park to the county?
No.
Okay.
No, we don't sell city parks to the county. They have enough parks their own. We need to keep ours.
Lorena Gonzalez?
Good point, Lance. You know, I don't believe that it should be condemned. I don't think it's a serious proposal, frankly. And I think that a serious proposal is one that really focuses on how we address the immediate needs that are presenting public safety and public health issues at City Hall Park. Look, this is not a new issue. Anybody who has been in downtown or who has come to downtown in the last, 20, 30, 40 years has known that City Hall Park is an area where people experiencing homelessness congregate. There are things that we can do before a sweep, which is what the judges are proposing right now. With all due respect, I object to their proposal to sweep the City Hall Park. What we need to do is have a geographic-based approach before that sweep is even spoken about, to connect people to the outreach services and the housing services that we can make available to them. That's why on Monday, I voted as a current city council member to commit $7.5 million to specifically address the homelessness issue that we see people experiencing in City Hall Park and in Pioneer Square, all to occur over the next year. And of course, I know that the county is also kicking in some dollars to help us do that. So we have the model to fix this. It is, I believe, the Just Care model, which I have been supporting with additional funding, including unlocking FEMA reimbursement to help continue to sustain that project. And I think that is a better, both immediate and long-term solution.
Okay, we move on. Colleen Echohawk.
Yeah, I am mortified that we have allowed that to happen in our city. I can't believe it. This is I think is a serious proposal from the judges and the county, because they are incredibly frustrated with what is going on, along with all of us. I mean, that's why I'm running. I'm frustrated because we could be doing more. And as mayor of the city, I would never have allowed that to happen. We would go out there and do the work that needs to be done. We've mentioned Just Care. I was so honored to partner with Just Care as the executive director of Chief Seattle Club, and we moved whole encampments. The whole community moved into hotel rooms where they got stability, where they were able to sleep at night, where they were able to be treated like human beings. And for some reason, in this beautiful city, this progressive city, we've lost our way. That we've allowed this to happen over and over again, not just by City Park, but all over the streets of Seattle. The city is, and I think our voters are asking for more. They're saying what has been allowed to happen is incredibly wrong. And we have to be clear about that. City government has allowed this to happen. And as mayor of the city, I would take immediate action. I would support those human beings and stop this crisis that has been happening.
Sell the park?
Oh, no, I would not sell the park.
Okay, very good.
I totally agree with Lance.
We'll move on to Bruce Harrell. Bruce Harrell, would you sell the park?
No. And I think we have to just acknowledge first that the city has failed in its leadership in this area. This was pre-COVID as well as post-COVID, that this is valuable real estate, great real estate to help the entire city, not just those who are living in it unsheltered. I think it's a false narrative to say that it's sweep versus the status quo. But I think, number one, that we don't give away prime real estate without a specific plan. So I think, again, we work with all of the neighbors, the county council, the neighborhood activists, the homeless advocates, the business community, and we publish a specific plan on how we address the issue. Now, I must tell you, I was just there a few weeks ago, about a week and a half ago, talking to a resident, the manager of a housing complex literally across the street. And we just started looking at it, and we started coming up with ideas of what it can look like, realizing that there's historical, cultural norms in that area. People sort of hang out, and how can we find out how we can both help them and revitalize the area? That's a gem in Pioneer Square. That particular unit that he managed was for 60% of area median income. And he and I came up with some ideas, but it's going to be important for the process that we use to make sure we figure out how to revitalize the area. But certainly not allowing it to be condemned, that is not the answer.
Finally, on this question, Art Lang.
That park's been an issue for more than a decade. There is a significant drug problem in that park, and we need to get those people help. It is not acceptable to leave them there. The judges that are expressing their displeasure through this proffer of trying to sell the park, which is absurd, we're not going to do that, obviously, are expressing the same urgency that the people of Seattle are upset by. We don't see it. It hasn't been happening for a decade. We had this declared emergency 6 years ago, which was the high water mark, apparently. And instead, we should be taking these people in and getting them the services that they need. If you can get people stabilized in 6 months, you can get them off to a different direction. I'm not sure that warehousing them in these hotels is a great idea for a long-term solution. It's very expensive, and we're not spending the money appropriately. We need to find the right nonprofit organizations that are doing this well and fund them triple, quadruple, whatever it takes to get it done. But we can put shelters up quickly. My plan includes that. I'm talking about 600 locked doors in 100 days, and we can move people into places where we can help them, because right now they're not getting help by being where they are. And being in that park is not a compassionate solution for anybody. It's not dignified at all. And it is a public safety emergency, and we need to treat it that way.
Let's continue on homelessness and let's expand our discussion of housing and solutions. And Lance Randall, you get this question first. When it comes to short term, to moving people, say, very quickly from a city hall park or another encampment, what is your solution for short-term housing? But then what is your solution for long-term, more permanent housing for the homeless?
Well, again, I talked about the Dignity Project, which is designed to fill this gap that we have not addressed, which is finding safe places, temporary places for people who are in tents, on the sidewalks and wooded areas, and those in RVs. These safe spaces are definitely temporary, but it stabilizes people by bringing all the amenities that they need on site, service providers, dignity teams, so that we can transition them into whatever situation we need to transition into, whether it's housing or helping them get back to their loved ones across the country. When it comes to long-term housing, we talk a lot about affordable housing, which is great, but we need to also talk about what I call purpose-driven housing, which needs to be for the veterans and those with mental health issues, because they're going to need a place to house them as well as have access to the service providers that can provide them their treatment and assistance. So I want to take a look at taking some of the money that we're using for housing, affordable housing, and also use it for purpose-driven housing to help these individuals have a permanent place. I'm glad we have a mental health institution going up in North Seattle, but we need others around the city to deal with that, and also drug addiction and our youth as well.
Okay, and we need to move on to our next candidate here, and that's Lorena Gonzalez. Housing solutions, long-term and short-term.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's no doubt that we need to have immediate solutions to ensure that we are treating people who are experiencing homelessness with dignity. And, in my conversations with folks from the Lived Experience Coalition and with service providers, everyone agrees that allowing folks to continue to experience homelessness in harsh outdoor conditions that are danger from a public health and a public safety perspective is unacceptable. And so I think there's a lot of agreement there. So the question is how do we fund those immediate solutions that we know will create an incentive for folks experiencing homelessness to come inside? We can do that by providing folks who are experiencing homelessness with the interventions that we know they prefer. Those are things where doors lock, where there are four walls. Non-congregate shelter is where we need to make some significant increased investments over the next year to ensure that we have a place when we're outreaching to folks, that we have a place to bring them inside. That's why
I do need to interrupt you here. I'm sorry. Colleen Echohawk.
Thank you for the question. We have a plan to bring everyone inside who's outside in 14 months. And that is going to take a whole variety of short-term options, emergency housing. I'm saying all of the above approach: pallet homes, tiny homes, hotels, churches, RV safe lots. All of the above is going to have to happen. And while that is happening, we need to have a leader who's going to be laser focused on building out the affordable housing that we are going to need. I can tell you as a builder of affordable housing that our current mechanisms are not enough for the amount of housing that we need to use. The low-income housing tax credit program is it's insufficient for as much housing as we actually need to build. I'm very honored to be a board member at the National Low Income Housing Coalition, the leading national experts on building low income housing. I will work on a national level to bring in the dollars that we need to actually support the community to get the housing built that we need to get built, because it will cost billions of dollars to get it done. We have to be a
I have
city.
to stop you here.
Yes.
I have to stop you here.
Thank you.
Bruce Harrell, short-term and long-term housing solutions.
Yeah, first of all, that is a policy to have both in place, and I support that. And as stated, whether it's rapid rehousing or housing first approach, tiny homes, this is a great strategy, but certainly a transitional strategy. Our long-term housing plan, and we did a lot of work in this in 2016, looking at the 65 recommendations that came from the HOLA committee, whether it's our housing levy or our inclusionary zoning policies or linkage fees. In those 65 strategies, helping people who recently were released from incarceration, as an example, the 65 strategies are good, solid strategies. But I want to make sure these are brick and mortar strategies. These are just housing people. And under my plan, we go much deeper on the issue to make sure it's sustainable. That's why I'm creating a Seattle Job Center to align the training and the services and the apprenticeships and all that's necessary for people to realign themselves with employment in our Seattle Job Center. That's why I'm creating a Healthy Seattle to make sure that we're looking at drug and alcohol issues and preventative health issues to make sure that people could stay straight. That's why we developed the pre-K program, looking at from 0 to 4 brain development and looking at the predictors of someone that may not be able to cope when they leave high school or in middle age. We need to know those predictors. This is not just a Seattle problem. So I'll stop there, Essex. I read your body language, brother.
Excellent, excellent. Art Langlie.
Well, clearly the solutions we've used so far are not working. The numbers are essentially stagnant. We cannot afford the short-term hotel housing that we're paying $4 million for a year's worth of housing for 140 people. I know that there's programs out there that are doing much better than that we can redeploy and triple down on and do better. Pallet housing is the way to go here for short-term. Tiny houses take too long to build and they're only building 2 a week. You can do pallet, 100 of them a week. I'm a contractor. I know how to build stuff, and this is a fast solution to get people indoors, inside walls, and the services that they need. In the long term, we need to re-envision what the housing looks like. Colleen knows this too, that if we can't just build what we've been building. We've reinvented everything in this world, whether it's the taxi cab with Uber and Lyft or the way we deliver meals or anything. We need to look at what we're going to build before we just run off and build it. And until we go and take a look at what is actually necessary and the types of facilities we can build, we need to consider that first, but then really get together some public-private partnerships to come up with solutions to build that quickly and affordably, because that's the way it's going to get done. There's not an endless pot of money. I understand everybody's throwing $1 billion out there, but every day is a new tax. We've got more utility increases coming. I mean, at some point we have to take the money and figure out what works and what doesn't work, and there are ways to do that.
Let me stop you there. And Casey Sixkiller.
Well, Essex short term, it really is about continuing to utilize the various strategies that have been mentioned here, so far. And that's, tiny home village program, hotel short term, making sure we actually have exits out of those programs into permanent supportive housing. And, Colleen mentioned 2 projects we worked on together over the last few years, standing up Eagle Village, repurposing other kinds of housing units, and even using the King's Inn in downtown Seattle for Native people. So, there are different ways for us to approach this. But the point is right now we got to do as much as we can to create capacity, to add temporary capacity to the existing shelter system so we can create safe spaces for folks to come inside. Longer term, we know at the under end of that pipeline, there's a crimp. There's not enough permanent supportive housing being produced for people to actually transition from shelter into more permanent places. That's why I've got a plan to triple our production on top of the 1,000 units that are already in production today, on top of the other investments that King County is making, so we can create that throughput. We can do it, and we can do it in really short order as long as we begin to adopt new ways to actually produce that PSH, to bring it online faster and more cheaply.
Thank you very much. Chris?
We're in the home stretch now, so let's talk about City Hall working with the business community. I don't think it's any secret, spoiler alert, that a lot of people downtown were not happy with the head tax debate and the now approved jumpstart tax. They would also probably argue they weren't given a seat at the table in these discussions. I think Lorena Gonzalez, you have a unique perspective when it comes to this subject because you were involved in both debates at City Hall with the head tax and the jumpstart tax. So I'll start with you. How would you handle any sort of discussion on future business taxes? And are you concerned at all that a major employer may leave the city of Seattle based on recent events?
So I'll start with the last portion of it because you guys are getting real strict on these time limits here. No, I think I'm not worried that an employer is going to uproot thousands of employees and leave behind thousands of square feet of commercial property that they are under lease on to stop doing business in the city of Seattle. These employers have chosen to do business in our city because it is profitable and because we have an amazing, amazing group of talented workers who make those businesses function every day. And we are a vibrant city. We will continue to be a vibrant city. I'm committed to building towards a vibrant city to ensure that the reasons why these businesses chose to do business here continue to be the case. In terms of progressive revenue tax, I continue to be a huge supporter of progressive revenue in order to address the root causes of many of the issues that we continue to talk about here. Racial inequality, income inequality, people experiencing homelessness and housing instability at mass proportions across the city, impacting working families, has been closely tied with the economic growth that has left working class people out of our local economy and out of the experience of sharing in the prosperity that many of our profitable corporations experience. Just like President Joe Biden, I believe that it is well overdue for corporations to start paying their fair share, particularly when we in the COVID pandemic see that these corporations have profited at 3 times the rate in this recession. So I will continue to champion those policies for working class families in our city.
All right, thank you, Lorena. Bruce, I'm going to give you the second crack at this question because you were involved in the head tax discussions when you were sitting on the city council. Are you concerned at all about businesses leaving downtown because of recent events, and how would you handle any future discussion about business taxes?
Yes, I am concerned. I am always concerned when an employer leaves Seattle. And I think a robust exit interview should occur such that we fully understand what led to a departure, because without employers, we have no employees. You know, there will be winners and losers coming out of a post-pandemic world. There's a book written called The Coming Jobs War by Jim Clifton, and he will describe in detail those cities that can attract talent and that can create jobs and sustain jobs will be the winners. And Seattle has to be a winner in this. We have a great hand. We're a port city, a maritime city. We have global science, health science, maritime technology. And so, yes, any kind of taxes, and no one debates, at least in my world, that corporations need to pay their fair share of taxes. I don't think there's a lot of debate there. But my approach is one of collaboration. My approach is one of math. And just like I led the discussion in the minimum wage discussions, and there was a lot of pushback. We made sure we had everyone at the table. We looked at the numbers and we looked at a graduated play. The one element that makes my candidacy, I think, distinct from my others is I also talk about the philanthropic market, the philanthropic world, that we are a wealthy city and we are a wealthy county, and there continues to be corporate social responsibility dollars and private individuals willing to help us on our core problems. And I will tap into that as well. Gotcha.
Thank you. Thank you for noticing the pen. Lance Randall, let's go to you. Same question. Are you concerned about a major employer moving out because of recent events, and how would you handle future business taxes?
Yes, I'm concerned because of the negative rhetoric coming out of City Hall. Like I said before, City Hall, that is not part of our job description to criticize our corporate community. It's our job description to make sure that every business feels wanted, supported, and appreciated. And we have not been doing that. And it causes a problem. The bottom line is this: from economic development best practices, you do not tax jobs, you incentivize jobs. People pay taxes who work. Corporations, yes, they do lease a lot of space, but they pay triple net. So they're paying a portion of taxes toward that. When we're talking about fair share, this is just a favorable state for a lot of corporations to do business. So we have to continue to depend on the state to make a decision of how they're going to do corporate income tax and income tax in general. But in the meantime, let's operate the way that we should operate when it comes to our businesses, large and small. They're valuable, and we should not do things like impose these head taxes because we have not been a good steward of our tax dollars. If we do a better job of managing our dollars, we won't get ourselves in a situation, but we also have opportunities to get corporate donations directly to the city. And the RES says if you do that, that means that you're considering as a donation to a nonprofit, so they write it off. Let's create win-win situations where we can partner with our business community, get what we need to be a well-functioning, thriving, viable city without being antagonistic to our business community. We need to support them, appreciate them, and stop the nonsense and negative rhetoric coming out of City Hall and the policies that are designed to hurt rather than help.
Okay, thank you, Lance. Casey Sixkiller.
Well, let's just be real honest. Businesses are leaving Seattle. You know, this is not a tomorrow issue. This is a today issue. And they're leaving not just because of the tax climate or the regulatory climate, but just the conditions of downtown Seattle. So, you know, let's set aside all the semantics for a moment here and just refocus on that. It is our responsibility, the mayor's responsibility, to build a big table that brings business in, treats them as a partner, and says, hey, how are we helping support you here in Seattle? How are we helping to create jobs? How are we finding new opportunities to incentivize businesses to locate here? You know, we got to remember, these big, large businesses that call Seattle home, they started as small businesses and grew into large corporations. These other small businesses that employ thousands of people around our city and in downtown, they could be the next large business. That's something for us to be proud of. That is something for us to help to incentivize rather than penalize and make it harder for them or give them a reason to leave Seattle. So let's stop with the stiff arm of the business community, bring them in and treat them as the partners they want to be.
Art Langlie, same question.
Yeah, I think let's hold on an exit interview. Let's not let it get that far. We really need to create some partnerships with the business community rather than create the toxicity that we've created, similar to the police department, between the city and people that are making the revenues that we need to do these social programs. We need to provide services that the business people look at and go, yeah, that's worth investing in. We're not doing that right now. We can go back to the really easy one, Aesop's fables. If you've got the goose that's laying the golden egg, you feed it, you water it, you give it a nice bed, get it a Netflix account if you need to, whatever it takes to keep that egg coming so that the city gets its piece of revenue in order to keep doing the programs that we have. I think business would be willing to participate more if they saw that their money was going to things that actually made a difference. Right now, they're not seeing the services that the city is here to provide to making the difference to the community that they're trying to do business in, and we're penalizing them. So let's hold on the exit interviews because I want everybody to stay here. But Casey's correct. There are businesses leaving now, and there are people scaling back their usage of downtown from 5 floors to 2, for instance. And there's other people that are looking for ways to get out of here. Bellevue is booming because of that. So let's be serious. Seattle needs to get its act together as far as keeping the business climate really productive and good for our city.
And Colleen Echohawk, let's give you a chance to answer this question as well. How would you handle any sort of future discussion about business taxes? And are you concerned about businesses leaving Seattle as a result of recent events?
You know, over the events of last summer, many of our businesses in this community posted on their websites, posted on their social media that they believe that Black Lives Matter. They said it over and over and over again. And as mayor of this city, I want to remind every single one of us that we do believe that Black Lives Matter. And if we believe Black Lives Matter, then we believe we have to address income inequality. We believe that we have to address the lack of affordable housing for Black and Brown and other people of color communities. We believe that we have to address the high rates of Black and Brown people who are experiencing homelessness. That's what this city is about. That's what they want. They're asking for that kind of transformational leadership. And you all know in the DSA, as a board member, I've had many disagreements with some of you all, but I'm still your partner. I'm still the person to talk to, the person that will help lead us in a way that we can become a truly equitable city where working families can live here and where business can succeed at the same time. I don't think that it is an either or. I think it's a both and, but the leadership has to be clear that our communities of color, other marginalized communities have been suffering in Seattle. And I am hearing loud and clear from our business community and from our neighborhoods that we don't want that. We don't want to be that kind of city. I heard it from many of you around this table.
Colleen, I have to be that guy. We're running up against the clock here. Essex, I think you had another question.
We're going to squeeze in one more question. We're going to run just a little bit long. Let me ask all of our candidates to limit their responses to 30 seconds on this question. It goes to Casey Sixkiller first. What is your plan and how will you pay for the bridge replacements for the Magnolia, Ballard, and University bridges?
By doing what I've been doing my entire career, bringing folks together, make sure we leverage every single dollar available to us, whether that's the federal level, state level, local level. And the fact is we have to make it a priority. We cannot wait for our infrastructure to break before we actually have a plan and a financing approach to address it and apply lessons learned from the West Seattle Bridge experience, in terms of how we're going to mitigate during that reconstruction or rebuilt environment for the local neighborhoods. But this is a really exciting moment as a transportation plan moves through Washington, D.C., and we can leverage it here at home.
Lance Randall, how do you pay for those bridges?
Federal funding, state funding, local funding with our levies, and also engaging the corporate community to help fill in these shortfalls as we try to continue to fix West Seattle, and we can't forget about Magnolia and the other drawbridges that are in need of repair as well.
Lorena Gonzalez?
We have $100 million worth of bridge maintenance and repair to do in the city of Seattle, according to a recent city auditor report. We currently have a evaluation happening at the city that will identify a bonding mechanism at the local level to free up some of those dollars to continue to work on bridge maintenance. But we need to supplement that with, of course, federal funding, state funding, and it'll be key to do that in the next couple of years with these federal dollars coming through. Again, this is something I'm hearing from laborers and construction folks that they really want this to be prioritized. Looking forward to it.
Understood, but I got to stop you. Colleen Echohawk, 30 seconds.
As an executive director of a nonprofit, I'm frankly embarrassed that we have gotten to this spot. If I had allowed something like this to happen at my nonprofit, I would have been fired, because this is unacceptable that our infrastructure is failing in our community. I will go after every federal dollar possible. I'll go after our state dollars, and I also will consider a bond if necessary. But I want to be clear that this should never have happened in the first place.
Thank you, Bruce Harrell.
So clearly state and federal funds, I'm actually hiring a cabinet level position to aggressively seek those funding, a person with tremendous experience in attaining that. This would be a proper use of the levy mechanisms and the bond mechanisms, but we must earn the community trust on how we spend our monies wisely. And you see a published plan under my leadership in that regard.
And Art Langlie.
Services in Seattle have been neglected for a very long time. That's one of the premier things about my candidacy, is that I believe we are not providing those things. The infrastructure in this town has been voted on over and over again by the public to be supported, and they have done so with roads and bridges those funds have been ignored and used elsewhere. We need to get away from the political think tank and get into the services that we need here. There is money out there to do these things, and we're one inspection away from having a serious problem with our drawbridges that are over 100 years old. I would have finished the West Seattle Bridge repair by now. There's ways to do this much quicker than we're doing. And unfortunately, there's not the leadership in this town to get it done.
Got to stop you there. All right, Chris?
Yeah, we apologize for running long, but we are going to draw it to a close right now. We wanted to get as much into this forum as possible, and we were also wanting to give a last chance to the candidates to make their case before the primary election. And we're going to go in the reverse order of how we started this debate. Again, try to limit your comments to 60 seconds. And we begin with Lance Randall.
So this has been a great opportunity to speak with the DSA and all those concerned about downtown. I'm not a stranger to downtown. I've had the opportunity to work on many projects. I managed a contract for several years with DSA where they helped me do retention expansion visits to companies all over the city. And I've also brought companies to the city, small businesses downtown, City University, Northeast University, and even a gaming school in Seattle Center, even though it's not in downtown, but it's very in close proximity. I've worked with the Hotel Association, Pike and Pine Corridor Association, the Restaurant Association, Convention and Visitors Bureau, And I've been all over downtown trying to make sure it stays strong and vibrant. As your mayor, you will have someone who's very familiar with the issues, has experience in working with coalitions in downtown, and has a plan to make sure that we keep our downtown vibrant and strong, because it is the most important part of our spoked wheel. Our downtown has to be strong in order for the rest of the city to be viable as well. So consider my candidacy as mayor of Seattle, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, Lance. Casey Sixkiller.
Look, I love downtown Seattle, but like the rest of our city right now, it's a mess. And what's just as disheartening as that is that our residents and businesses have so little faith in our ability to fix it. This election is our chance to get Seattle back on track, to move past divisions and semantics and focus on getting the work done. We need new leadership. Just because you've been on the ballot before doesn't mean you're qualified to be mayor. What we need now is a mayor who is clear-eyed about the challenges facing our city and has a record of working collaboratively to solve problems, who isn't afraid to tackle tough issues and make decisions and stick with them. I've been working my entire life to make Seattle a better place for families and businesses to call home. And I'll be ready from day one to partner with the DSA to make downtown that thriving, vibrant, cool place we know it is. But to do that, I got to make it to the general election. So I'm asking all of you for your support and ask humbly for you to vote for me in the upcoming primary on August 3rd. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Casey. Art Langlie.
Yeah, I'm an outsider here. I'm not a political candidate previously, and I've spent a lifetime building bridges, figuratively, in the city and raising a family, building a career and giving back through work with organizations such as the Salvation Army and Fred Hutch. I can deliver the solutions that Seattle needs to rebound, especially the solutions for downtown, successful businesses, and safe and vibrant streets. We know that rebuilding Seattle will require decisive leadership. We've been lacking that for at least a decade. The Seattle way of being a team approach to politics has left us. We're now in cage matches, and we need to blow the whistle on that and start over. We need to come back to a place where we used to move forward together and make things happen in this town, so that all for the better. We can set a new course if we decide not to settle for the just least worst option. Join my campaign and let's begin the tough work of rebuilding our great city. You can find me at artlangley.com, Langlie, and I'd really appreciate your vote in the primary.
Thank you, Art. Bruce Harrell.
Thank you. Well, I trust that we have fine leaders as candidates in this forum, but I would suggest that the stakes are so high right now. And as I said earlier, the city is starving for decisive leadership. We are redefining the city right now coming out of this post-pandemic world. I think the voters are going to say that they want a commodity whose values are proven, that they have a legislative record and a history of community service that is proven. How we deal with homelessness and public safety, sort of the intersection of those two is going to be critical. And I think I provide that skill set that knows how to have effective public safety, but still a compassionate way with which we house the homeless. The race and social justice issues, I've dedicated a lifetime toward that work. And business revitalization, everyone knows my background in supporting businesses and helping businesses. And so I think I offer the skill set and all the other rhetoric that you hear and all these stone throwing. I will be the mayor that always tries to keep it positive. And that's helped me well in life, that I am committed to continuous improvement in the books that I read, the people I talk to, and everything that I do. And so I think the city will see that favorably in my candidacy, and I hope you will as well. So thank you for this morning's forum.
Thank you, Bruce. Colleen Echohawk.
Well, I just want to say thank you for taking the time today to listen to all the candidates here. And I want to ask for your consideration. You know, I have never run for political office before, but I'm stepping up now because I believe that there are solutions that need to happen in our city that are not happening. And we know that our homeless community and the homeless crisis has continued to grow and grow and grow every year. 6 years ago, we declared the state of emergency. And since then, the crisis has only gotten worse. And now we have babies, we have elders, we have families who are sleeping outside or in cars. And in a city like Seattle, a progressive city, a wealthy city, We have allowed this to happen. And it is because of the lack of leadership. Because when I talk to people around the city, there is incredible frustration saying, Colleen, I want to help. I want to support. I want to do something, but there's no plan. There's no one communicating about what's going on. We cannot move forward in our city without solving this crisis of homelessness. And I am our best bet to do it. I love this community. I love our downtown core. I have been a partner and I will continue to be a strong partner to support our downtown. It is a treasure, like I said earlier. It's something that we need to guard fiercely and make it the coolest downtown that is in any city around this country. Thank you for your consideration. Check out our website for more information, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you, Colleen. Lorena Gonzalez, you get the last word.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk about my economic plan for all of Seattle, because I believe that the economy of small businesses, workers, and their families in neighborhoods across our city is just as important as the mega corporations downtown that have made record-breaking profits during the global pandemic. And it's the neighborhood business districts across the city, the mom and pop shops, the garage and kitchen table startups that give Black, Brown, Indigenous, and people of color a way to earn their American dream and give our communities the rich diversity and vitality that are at real risk today. Amazon's pandemic profit soared 220% over the last year. And listen, I'm glad that they're here, but they don't need subsidies from the taxpayers. And Seattle taxpayers sure do need companies like Amazon to, in the words of President Biden, start paying their fair share. I am the only candidate here today willing to challenge an unjust power structure that has prevented us from addressing our city's problems with homelessness and income inequality with the resources, progressive resources it will take. As your mayor, my focus will be equitable economic recovery citywide. And of course, that includes small businesses and nonprofits in downtown. But I will be focused on a worker-first approach citywide to build a Seattle where working people can live, raise a family, and thrive in this great, amazing, beautiful, vibrant city that is the city we all adore and want to see succeed. I look forward to earning the support and the vote of people across the city in the future weeks. And thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, Lorena. Essex.
Thanks to all of our candidates for joining us for this discussion. And thanks to the Downtown Seattle Association for putting all of this together. We remind all of you to vote in the August 3rd election. The top two candidates advance to the fall election. And on behalf of Chris Daniels, we both thank you for your time. Bye-bye.